All right, welcome to the AIA Homes Tour, or Virtual Tour 2020. Thank you for joining this live session. We are very excited to present these two amazing architects. A quick note, we want to thank our title sponsor, Douglas Construction Company. And also, at the very end of this presentation, we're going to open it up for questions. And so please feel free to put those in the bottom little Q&A section, and we'll get to as many as we can at the end. With that being said, I'd like to introduce Lucy Bagg and Robert Gay of Thoughtbarn.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for getting up bright and early to be with us on Sunday morning. We are live from our studio in East Austin. I'm Lucy, and this is Robert.
Good morning, everyone.
Today, we're going to share with you some of the design process behind the Ridge House. But first, we're excited to be part of the first ever virtual AIA Homes Tour. And we'd like to thank Ingrid and the staff of AIA Austin, the Homes Tour Committee, and especially David and Heyman for all their support and imagination in putting this event together.
Hayden, just kidding. We'd also like to thank our gold sponsors, Eastside Lumber and Decking. You can always count on them for great lumber information. U.S. Lumber Brokers, Benjamin Baker and his entire team. We also want to thank the rest of our sponsors, Lauren Kirkpatrick with Texie Realty Partners, Martel Windows and Doors, Clay Imports, BMC, and Ferguson. We also want to give a special thanks to a past team member, Brian Carville, who is the project manager on this project, current team member, Anna McConnell, the structural engineer, Hollingsworth Pack, the landscape design, John Hart Asher, and the builder for the project, Mark Rayburn, Kristen, and Janet, and especially the project foreman, Patrick Wilson. We had a really great time working with those guys on this project.
So what usually happens on a homes tour, of course, is that you have the opportunity to see all these beautiful homes in person. We obviously don't have that luxury today, but we hope you've all been enjoying the Matterport walkthroughs and the films. But what we will try and do is try and share more of the stories behind the design and construction of the house than you might get on a typical homes tour experience. So we have 4 parts to our presentation. The first part is the scene setting. We're going to introduce our work, the clients, the neighborhood, and the site. The second part is about the initial rounds of design for the house, what the goals and big ideas were. The third part looks at some specific details of what actually got built. And finally, in the fourth part, we have some reflections from the client on the project, including some advice for others thinking of doing the same.
You might ask yourself, who is Thoughtbarn?
Well, Robbie started the company in 2007, not long after finishing grad school at UT, and I joined him full-time in 2010. But our first project together was actually several years before any of that, at the Rural Studio in Alabama, where we designed and built a screened porch addition to a mobile home. A lot of time and a lot of projects have happened since then. We're a team of 7 now, but much of our design approach has its roots in that rural studio experience, building with an economy of means, being inventive with materials, a culture of craft, a sense of place. These themes underpin a broad range of projects we've worked on, including commercial buildings, public art installations, and of course, houses. With our residential projects, we tend to focus on developing a simple geometric clarity to the form of the house, often putting a twist on vernacular traditions. We push ordinary materials to create memorable effects and spatial experiences. We're always trying to create strong connections between the house and its site, and we try to use the architecture of the house to help mitigate the extremes of the Texas climate. Our projects usually have quite compact footprints for custom homes. We've always considered natural light and generous ceiling heights as more of a luxury than square footage or expensive materials. We're heavily influenced, of course, by living and working in Austin, where most of our projects are. We found the city fosters a client base who's interested in progressive design at the same time that they want to build in a way that feels authentic to the place, however they might define that.
And now an introduction to the clients. Both clients are from Texas, meaning they were born here. One is from the south part of the state and one is from the north part of the state. One is a screenwriter and one is a technical director of media. They're both creative people and they came to us with an interest in doing a project that was bold and experimental, while also drawing on influences from the particular neighborhood around them.
They had purchased a property in Barton Hills, which is a neighborhood that was largely developed between the 50s and 70s. It has winding suburban streets and low-slung ranch houses, typical of that era. Their property is a big 3/4-acre lot with less topography than many of its neighbors. And here we're going to hear directly from the clients. I'll be the client. Robbie, you asked me the question.
You're going to be the client? Okay.
I'll be the client.
Why was the site the right place to build a home?
We pretty much focused on Barton Hills because we love the central location. Easy access all around town and to Barton Springs, but the rolling hills and gorgeous oak trees are what we really love the most. This particular lot has an abundance of beautiful old heritage oaks that we feel define our space and give us the feeling of being plopped right into a lush green park.
The lot also had an existing 2,200 square foot house on it. This house had 2 additions that resulted in this odd, skinny courtyard down the middle. Most challengingly, we couldn't quite put our heads on it, but the house seemed really small. Every time we visited, we were just astonished at how low the ceilings were. We couldn't quite figure out why this house was so small. The interior spaces were like a submarine. They were like living on a boat that was closed off from the inside. The finishes were, let's just say, a little bit outdated. And the bathroom was, a little stinky. Are you the client or I'm the client?
I'm the client.
Okay. What were your priorities at the beginning of the design process?
First and foremost, we really wanted to incorporate the natural colors, lines, and feel of the landscape. It was important for us to try to create something that felt bold and exciting, but that also highlighted the nature surrounding us rather than try to dominate it.
Client wish list. I want lots of light.
Durable materials are essential.
I'd really love a connection to the outdoors.
It should be contemporary, but complementary to the neighborhood.
I really want tall ceilings.
And of course, we have to connect better to the outdoor spaces and the trees.
I really love a nice screen porch.
And texture is also important.
You know what I like? I like those windows that are kind of high. What are they called? Oh yeah, clear story windows.
We love built-in bookshelves. We're both avid readers.
I want it private, but also open.
I love wood. I don't like maintenance so much.
Oh, and by the way, we've also collected some photos. Oh, Pinterest. So now we're going to schematic design, the beginning of what we like to call visual communication. We like to develop ideas that foil off each other, ideas that make clients tease out their initial priorities.
Originally, we thought we were going to remodel the house. So the intent was to keep the footprint more or less intact and just shift the interior walls around. We were also kind of forced to do this because of the location of 3 heritage oak trees, which you can see on this plan and which we'll come back to in a bit. So our main focus was instead on how we could put a new roof on this footprint that would really open up the interior volume and start to create stronger, more interesting relationships between the house and the site.
So that leads us to 3 schemes that we initially presented. The first scheme is the pop-up clear story, a simple move with a flat roof in which we pushed up the ceiling in the main living space to expose and give a view to the surrounding trees and the surrounding landscape. Mansard, mansard, this lovable, huggable roof form with 2 dormers was a crowd favorite. We imagined the mansard coming in with this large picture window where you could watch the squirrels and birds play with each other. It would bring large swaths of light in from the roof plane. The next approach that we looked at was the asymmetrical zig and a zag, the asymmetrical roof with a butterfly catchment strategy. What we liked about this scheme, we were trying to really bring in the internal courtyard with lots of glass that, well, brought in that internal courtyard. Those schematic design refinements led to what we like to call the schematic design showdown between the intersecting gables, AKA Super Cricket, versus the butterfly courtyard. Option 1, the Super Cricket, had a farmhouse vibe on the outside. We had vertically expressed lines as siding, stark white exterior, a lot of glass in the gables, dramatic interior experience with 2 intersecting wood-clad gables, and it also allowed for a 2nd-story loft in one of the gables. Then up next, the butterfly courtyard. This was a more modest 1-story version with the distinct zigzag roof. This was clad in gray brick, which started to peel away from the facade to become a screen. This design was more influenced by mid-century modern design language with clear story and triangular windows, screens, landscape coming into the house through courtyard and planter in the front porch. Okay, who's going to be the client?
Okay, you be the client now, Robbie. What were your favorite aspects of the schematic design you decided to move forward with?
It was a tough decision for us as we loved all the designs for different reasons. Ultimately, the inventive asymmetrical roofline, which is both architecturally interesting and whimsical, won us over. The design just excited us because it felt fresh and innovative while also referencing the original home's mid-century roots, as well as reflecting details of other architects' work of that era that we admire.
So we've looked at a lot of images of our schematic models. Let's now take a look at how the scheme worked in plan and section and some of the considerations that we worked through in 2 dimensions. Once again, this is the existing site plan, and you can see that the final site plan hewed really pretty closely to that same footprint. This was in large part to do with 3 heritage oak trees that really limited how much you could shift away from the original footprint. The original house had a wing of bedrooms and bathrooms on the east side, on the left in this screen, with the kitchen and dining room on the west side, a porch and utility room above those, and this room bridging between them that was really cut off from the rest of the house and the yard. The new plan more or less kept this organization, again with the bedrooms and bathrooms along that east side, the kitchen and dining looking out over the west side of the yard, and then a media room below that, which gives those spaces some privacy from the street, and then a living room that bridges between them, but opens up much more to the south and the north, as well as the west, while using a wall of media storage to give the bedrooms a buffer from the main space. And finally, we have that screened porch on the south that connects to both the carport and the backyard. This plan had a lot to do with not impacting the tree roots any more than they already were. So the green circles you can see in this plan represent the 50% and the 25% critical root zones, which are specific measurements the City of Austin uses to govern construction around protected trees. A tree which is greater than 19 inches in diameter is a protected tree within the City of Austin. If it's greater than 24 inches, it's considered a heritage tree, and that was the case for all of ours, and it's subject to additional protections. So how do you determine the critical root zone? You convert the inches of the trunk, the diameter of the trunk, into feet to determine the critical root zone. Within half of that, what's called the 50% critical root zone, very limited construction is allowed, no cut and fill greater than 4 inches. And absolutely no impact is allowed within the 25% root zone. The existing house actually encroached on both the 50% and 25% root zones. So once we determined we needed to pour a whole new slab for the house, we had to negotiate with the city arborist on what they would allow. And they eventually determined with us that we could pour a new slab of the same depth as the existing in the areas that had already been impacted, as long as we didn't impact any new areas. So here are those 3 trees being wrapped in 2x4s prior to the start of construction to protect them. So while the plan of the house was strongly influenced by the roots of the trees, the section of the house was influenced by the tree canopies in terms of both wanting to protect them and really experience them from inside the house. In this section, you can see how the zigzag roof makes a butterfly ceiling over the living and dining area, which is over 12 feet at its highest point, and that creates the high clear story windows that gives views up into the canopy. You'll see a bit later where the roof drops over the kitchen cabinets. You can see that over on the right. There's actually a giant tree branch there that we couldn't remove that passes just over the top of that. And that's actually another city rule that you can't remove more than 25% of the canopy of a protected tree, which we wouldn't have wanted to do anyway. Over on the left, we kept the ceilings lower so that we could run HVAC ducts. But once we got to the main bedroom at the rear of the house, we vaulted that ceiling again, as well as in the screened porch, which also has that high level window over the carport. And what you'll see as we progress through these 3D sections is the variety of ways in which we brought in light and views to the house. Starting at the front, we really screened the window at the front porch to give privacy from the street. And you can see that window here as we cut into the house. In the media room on the right, there's a corner window that gives a panoramic view of the front yard. And then in the living room and dining room, you get those higher ceilings and clear story windows we've been talking about, looking up into the tree canopy, as well as large sliding doors out to the yard on the west and south side. There's another corner window at the kitchen, and then high windows in the bathroom on the other side. Maybe that's in the one before. High windows in the bathroom on the other side, which is closer to the fence line. In this section, you can see the skylight in the main bathroom, which gives you more light and a different kind of light than just that high window on the east side. And we'll talk more about that later. And then, of course, in this section, you see that courtyard cutting into the house, which is that kind of vestige of the original and really brings light and connection to the yard into the living room, and also allows you to see all the way from one side of the house to the other. And finally, the main bedroom with another corner window for a panoramic view to the backyard, and the screened porch, which is fully screened on 2 sides, the third side having the high clear story, and is a really great place to be immersed in the natural surroundings of the site.
Schematic design excitement leads to design development realities. What you might have noticed in the final design from the schematic design is how the project changed from what we proposed as the initial gray brick. This, unfortunately, we wanted the exterior cladding to come in with $2 signs. Unfortunately, it came in with $3 signs, and that didn't leave us any further budget for other areas we needed within the house. We went back to the client wish list. We narrowed down the ideas that we felt could be applicable to an exterior siding. We applied that to some earlier design principles that we had looked at with the Super Cricket, where the vertical siding starts to become a screen-like element that peels away. We imagined the client standing in a field, kind of a moray, looking around as they were imagining their house. We explored how we could use a slightly darker tone from the white into a gray tone. Then we looked at an even darker tone going to a almost black that seamlessly blended within the landscape. What we tried to do with the siding was vary the spacing. We varied the spacing throughout the entire project on all elevations. What this did was give a more varied look to the overall aesthetic of the house. As you can see here, where the siding opens up as it comes to the corner and tightens as it goes in other places. On the front of the house, the battens that are the siding peel away and become that screen. Along the northwestern facade, you can see how the tightening of the battens and the spacing allows for a more integrated feeling of standing in that forest. For the construction of this, we kept the logic to a 2-inch logic. It was important for us to also make sure the battens did something structurally as well as aesthetically. Each of the battens covered up the vertical joints of the large hardy panels behind it. We extensively dimensioned this, and we'll give credit to our builders for immaculately doing what our drawings had asked for. In the hardy system, we knew we would have a challenge with a black facade and a no eave detailing. So we looked at a simple rain screen batten system that helped with the overall water mitigation and any potential heat gain. We also looked at separating and providing a better drip edge at the top to get the water plane away from the siding. On either ends of the house, we introduce a softer, more caramel toned wood element into the house. This darkness of the black was softened strategically by this beautiful clear pine siding on the soffits and walls at the front porch. And in the screen porch in the back and the ceiling of the carport. This wood was provided to us by US Lumber Brokers, which is one of our gold sponsors. And we've always enjoyed working with them to get custom siding, mill profiles, etc. As you can see, the caramel toned wood inset at the front glows at night when accented. Okay, who's gonna be what?
Okay, I'll be the client here.
You're gonna, okay. We looked at a lot of siding materials and strategies. Are you glad we went with the cementatious board and batten?
It's interesting to look back at the evolution of the exterior materials that went from using brick, which we really loved the look of, to us considering black stained wood, but shying away from for maintenance reasons, to landing on the durable hardy panel, but using it in an interesting new way. This is where working with architects who want to push ideas further to create something you haven't seen before pays off. The variation in the battens adds an original element to the design that feels special to us. The house almost disappears, into the natural environment as another organic, albeit stylized, element of the lot. So having toured around the exterior, we want to take you inside now to share a bit more about the interiors. Where the exterior is quite stark and minimal, the interior is by contrast more eclectic and varied, and introduces color, texture, and pattern in several unexpected ways. We want to recognize the client's influence in particular here, who brought her talents in film and fashion to the approach, using a combination of styles to create a more eclectic and comfortable setting in contrast to the strong lines of the more contemporary exterior. So we're going to take a look at some particular moments on the interior that are highlights to us.
Let's look at the kitchen utility area. We worked with a client who'd also collected a lot of photos on really trying to hide this utilitarian laundry room storage element. What we really wanted to do was we wanted to accent the back wall with a splash of color. We looked at hues of blue for the cabinetry. But then we decided, what if we made that hidden room part of a piece of furniture? What if it made it feel like it was part of an overall piece of cabinetry? What if we, as we all like to do, hid that fridge behind a panel-ready walnut cladding? The result is a hidden storage room that seamlessly blends in to the kitchen cabinetry.
On the other side of the house, we have the private wing with the bedrooms and this hallway tucked behind the media wall that's one of the darker spots in the house. Our instinct would have been to paint it white to lighten it up as much as possible, but the client actually chose to paint it blue, with the idea that there's a warmth that comes from cozy dark spaces that draws you in and makes you feel like you've discovered a secret. In addition, here frames that screen at the front of the house really nicely. And then, even more of a surprise, is the jungle room. On paper, the least interesting room in the house. It's the middle bedroom, which is used as an office. But with this wallpaper that the client found is made into something really special, its own world. And you might even recognize it from the cover of this month's Austin Home.
Another great part of the house that we like to talk about is the main bathroom space. You really get to the main bathroom space by taking a series of lefts. A left once you go into the main bedroom, and a left once you go in the main bathroom. And this sets up an experience of a hidden wet room sanctuary in the middle. We wanted to explore how this sanctuary was kind of bathed in white crinkled tiles, and we worked with the owner to express a patterned floor pattern, more or less, with various tiles. We worked through renderings to realize some of the initial ideas until we ended up with this sanctuary type space with the crinkle handmade tiles and the concrete encaustic pattern tiles on the floor. The space gets a variety of light during and throughout the day, and the cat loves it the most. Okay, who's going to be the client?
You will be. So the clients moved in 2.5 years ago, and preparing for the homes tour has been a great excuse to talk with them about their experience of living in the house. So to finish this presentation, we're going to hear from them again for that. All right, Robbie, you be the client.
Okay.
What do you enjoy most about the house after 2 years of living in it?
It is special that any given moment from any spot within the house, you feel surrounded by nature. It's such a calming, peaceful, and comforting feeling. In addition, or maybe you could say in cohesive contradiction to that, the complex angles and lines of the house add another artistic layer. It gives us the feeling of living in a very uniquely designed structure that doesn't feel overly designed. The courtyard space could have easily been absorbed to the interior to allow for more square footage, but would have eliminated one of our favorite parts of the design, in which the outdoor literally cuts into the house.
All right, advice for others. I'll be the client now.
You be the client. Okay,
me.
here, you're gonna be the client. All right. What advice do you have for others wanting to build their own home?
Designing and building a house is one of the greatest learning experiences we've ever had. As this was our first time building anything, it made for a crash course in a subject we love, but like with anything worth doing, it's not all easy. Listen to someone who knows what they're talking about through their own experiences with design and building. There are some things you just can't know until you're on the other side of a project, even if people told you them from the start, but do your best to take in that advice. Also, pay attention to all the details. Even if you feel like you don't have the experience to have an opinion, it is your home, so your opinion always matters, even if it can be wrong. Someone will explain a way it can be done better, and sometimes you both even come up with a totally new solution. The more time you can put into your project and really thinking through all the details, visualizing how you want to live in your space, the more it will pay off in the end. And that's it. Thank you so much, everyone.
Well, can you hear me, guys?
Yeah.
Okay, great job. Really, really amazing project. We've got some questions that have come in, and the first one is, there was a question about the software, especially some of the rendering that you guys, the rendering software for the interior and exterior. What softwares do you guys use?
Yeah, we use a combination of, well, we use Revit to do our technical drawings, and we also model in that. And then, you know, we also use a SketchUp platform to help with visualization. And we use that with V-Ray as well to help with our visuals. Some of the little vignette mock-ups, we like to do those because it helps us kind of virtually build the details, much like, you know, designing and building. So we like to really think about those details. You can really see the layering in that, and we do that through a combination of those platforms.
Okay. The next question we had is many people saying great presentation and a really nice job. So not really a question, but it's all accurate. And then we have,
Thanks, everyone.
can you clarify the design process here? Sounds like you started with the remodel and switched to a new build. If so, can you elaborate on why? You mentioned foundation, cost, evaluation of gut remodel versus new.
Yeah, you know, we really wanted to keep a lot of the existing house, and we tried to do that through, you know, a series of investigations. And what really happened was we felt like, you know, the structural slab was going to be, we're going to be able to keep that, you know, and until the very end. And we started to notice that, you know, the slab was really starting to heave more than we had anticipated. And it just seemed more feasible if you're going to go ahead and build a kind of a new house to put it on kind of solid foundation. So in that area, you know, you have limestone really close to the surface. And, you know, what was happening with that existing foundation was we were just getting way too much differential movement in that to make it feasible to build a new residence. So That's, that happened a little bit later in the process than we normally would have anticipated, but we kind of went with it, and the clients were very gracious and, working with us on that. And
I think it's always an interesting question. We get asked that a lot when we work with people who've bought a house that they want to remodel, is where is the threshold when it makes sense to remodel and then when it makes sense to start again. And I think in this case, because the roof was so low and there wasn't the ability to sort of find hidden space within the roof, taking the roof off and then wanting to build on top of those walls really meant that in the end, it was easier to build those walls from new as opposed to trying to modify the existing framing. And that was a decision we reached in conversation with the contractors, especially because that framing didn't have insulation in it. It had asbestos siding on the outside. And so at the point that we realized we were going to build all new framing, then the question of the slab, which, if it was just going to be a remodel, then the slab perhaps could have been salvaged. But at the point that we were building all new framing, walls and roof on top of it, really didn't make sense to keep it.
Okay. We have quite a few questions about the siding. Is it all Hardie battens and the Hardie backer board, or was there some wood integrated?
Yeah, that's correct. All of the black exterior siding it is a Hardie panel, and then you have Hardie battens as well. And so then was furred out with Hardie as well, over a peel and stick membrane over structural sheathing. So the accent portions of it were the pine 2x6 cladding with a 1/4 inch reveal kind of down the middle and at the lap joint.
And then actually where it was a screen at the carport and front porch, that was actually wood battens.
Yeah, and that's correct. Where it went to a screen, that did change to wood on a steel frame. So apologies for that. So right, where it changed to a screen, excuse me, and not the exterior siding, that did actually change to black painted wood.
Okay. And then how did you address some of the maintenance issues? Sometimes there's a fair amount of sealant that you have to, with the Hardie panels, beyond just painting.
Oh, it was, I think the building team did an amazing job of kind of sealing everything up. All the joints were sealed, and it's well sealed.
Okay. So another question came in, and I didn't see in the pictures, but were there any instances where those screen elements were interfered with cleaning exterior windows? Or I think it was just in the front and the back. So
yeah, they're all very separated. I think in the front, that screen is almost a forecourt screen. It's kind of an ode to a mid-century modern kind of forecourt where you had planting. And so, and
that's kind of 6 feet in front of the window behind it.
Okay. And then another question about you mentioned it briefly, but how to keep those windows protected from the elements without having the eaves and the overhangs. I saw a drip edge in there somewhere, but would you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, we try to do, they're not as protected as, windows would be with, large eaves and stuff like that, protected from kind of water and sun. But, the benefit of having the trees, they really helped us mitigate a lot of heat gain. They provide that almost an umbrella effect in which we could kind of slide in this kind of very dark, stark box. At the windows, we tried to use detailing where we projected out the frame in an instance. So you get the drip edge outside of the window frame, enough so that it's not causing kind of water mitigation issues. So There's some slight, nuances there to where we're doing a little bit of projection, at the roof eave that we project it just enough, probably like 4 to 3 inches to get that, drip, clear of the siding.
And then on every edge that the water is running to, we have a gutter that carries the water outside to either a rain chain or a spout that delivers it sort of past the footprint of the house.
Okay, thank you. And then we've got another question about timing. How long did the design process from SD to CDs take?
I think it was
Maybe 6 months.
It was a year between starting design and starting construction. And so probably there was, I would say, about 6 to 8 months of design, and then 3 months of back and forth with pricing and tuning the budget and working through the permits and getting the project in place to start.
Yeah.
Okay. And then do you
about
all,
a year of construction.
do you all normally include your renderings in combination with wall sections? I mean, with your working drawings?
We have, begun to do that a little bit. The fear with obviously doing renderings is if the rendering is accurate to the construction's detail as well. So, and that requires a lot of extra work on the back end, obviously, to, re-render if you've changed any of the detailing. So we have, and we do, they don't accompany as much as we're kind of showing here. But, we've had some contractors that, love to show the renderings to really, to give, people building it an idea of where they're going, right? But I think it's, the onus is on the construction manager or the project superintendent to make sure that, hey, let's make sure we're looking at the right drawing set. Let's make sure we're executing the right details. So we do, but with a caveat that we also want to make sure the right information is being built.
I think Robbie's right. The renderings can be a tool to get the contractors and build team excited, just as it can be to get the clients excited. And we've been to job sites before where we'll find the renderings pinned up around the job site to just sort of get buy-in from all the subcontractors and give everyone that sort of vision of where they're going towards.
I know that when we build, we love to have those renderings, as much information as possible. So that's great. And then we have a question about what are some of the trickier moments during construction and execution? Were there any surprise challenges that turned into impromptu design opportunities?
Good question.
Well, I think the whole process is exactly that. I mean, I think there are, challenges that come up in the process that that result in impromptu design changes. I can't think of one in particular, but yeah, there were a couple of things that came up. I think, some of the, working with, like, as mentioned, our builders and Patrick Wellsome, working with him on the eave detailing and gaining his knowledge and how to frame that. I think that was kind of instrumental, and we altered some details, of how that was executed per his advice, and really, getting into kind of the nuts and bolts of those things. I think in some of the execution of the screen elements, I mean, as with any project, you have challenges that come up with kind of available budget, and you have to kind of work with that. So, we use different species or different wood species than we had initially kind of wanted to use, but we were able to execute, what we wanted to execute, So I think hopefully that answered your question. Yes, there were things that came up. We, having experience doing design build, we know how you can get into a process, and then also how you can kind of, work with your overall team, the construction team, and come up with solutions that align with all the variables that are present for a project.
I think too, even though we like to counsel that you should try to have all of your decisions made about all the selections and specifications for the house before you begin, that doesn't always happen. And in this case, a lot of the interiors decisions were made sort of as construction got underway. And I think at the same time, that's kind of nice because you can be on site talking about how certain, once you can see what you're going to see from all the windows and how the light comes in, I think that really influenced, say, the choices of the tiles and some of the colors that we decided to go with. And then, of course, some of those fun moments that we talked about with the pops of color and pattern that really kind of came in response to sort of living and being on the site.
Yeah, that master bathroom tile with the way that plays with the light is just amazing. One last question, and we'll let you guys off the hook. Did the black siding present any cooling climate challenges in the Texas heat? Do you have to do any special design or HVAC considerations?
No, I think, what we tried to point out, we've had that question before, and we tried to point out that we just tried to elevate that typical detail that you see, in a lot of realized projects in Austin about, the batten usually goes directly onto the structural sheathing. So we just wanted to add that simple, air gap, through a rain screen system. And, we felt like that helped, hopefully mitigate any kind of heat gain, when that siding is getting some direct sun. The hope is that it's taking that heat there and it's not transferring into the residence. So, and same with water, if any water gets behind that system, you've got a watertight system behind that, and then that system is vented out. So, it's for us, it's kind of using a standard detail, applying it to a kind of a normalized system that you see a lot in construction, and just trying to give it a little bit of a variable, when we had to go to that system to help, to your point, with the Texas sun, and
I think that another reason we felt reasonably confident with that is, in reality, there is very little direct sun on this site because there are so many trees, and also they're live oaks. So they essentially have leaves on the trees all year round. So we are sort of perpetually in shade in that house.
Well, great. Thank you guys so much for sharing this house with us. Great job. And let's look forward to seeing the rest of the tour. Hope you guys.
All right, we enjoyed it.
Thank you
David
so much.
and Hayden, and
David
thank you
Hayden.
to everyone who attended.
Thank you guys.
Enjoy the rest of the presentations today.